Right, 48 Buick, 41 engine. Buick engine, same engine, basically. On, I think it's 46 and up, it might be 47, the engine mounts are here, and they come down a big convoluted thing and bolt to the chassis. Obviously we haven't got that on that car. This is your 41 engine mount plate. Engine mounts go on here, both sides on that, so you've got a saddle on that rubber, yeah? Mm-hmm. Now those, if you put this back in here, what those slots are for I do not know, but there you've got roughly 39 centimetres to the inner hole, and on this one you've got about 39 to the outer hole, so that clearly isn't going to fit in there. We know that, yeah. But we've got to go with that because we haven't got any other mounting plates here. All the original mounts are down there for a 48, but we haven't got the engine block to take the mounts. Main issue with it was when they put it in, the gearbox wasn't lined up, and they'd try to screw this is your torque ball, that goes to your torque tube that runs to the back axle, prop shaft runs through the middle. That basically was all cross-threaded and bent, so I had to file it all up and re-tap all the holes on the drill to make sure it's all dead square. So what I'll do is assemble the gearbox loosely, because it's got no internals on it because it's all being rebuilt, and then we can hang that in the hole, bolt it up and see what is lined up on the gearbox mounts, because it was all in completely sideways. The torque tube was hitting the chassis, do you remember? Yeah. So first thing to do is bolt all of that up, get it in there, see what lines up on the engine mounts, if we have to re-drill the cross member, because you've got the lower mount and then you've got your thrust mount, which is this one. So all of that's got to be bolted back on just to see how it lines up. Then I'll have to take all of that out of there, bolt it all on the back of the engine again, lift the engine back in, so I know that the gearbox end and the torque tube are in line. Yeah. Then we can sort out what's going on with the front mounts, because as I said, if we've got to narrow that, it's coming down and you can end up with a gearbox hitting the back of the floor, and because there isn't a lot of room in there. So it might mean making adapter plates, but you need to keep the weight of the engine on those pads. So I don't know until we get the gearbox sorted out, then bolt it to that and then put the whole lot back in and see what's going on. Okay. Which is an absolute ball ache, but there's no other way of doing it realistically. You know, you can't just guess engine mounts and things, it has to be right. Yeah. Because it'll just, again, I keep saying things like this, but it will just chew itself to death. The gearbox has been completely stripped because it was all the bearings were shot on it. Even with nothing in it, it's heavy. Don't need to put all the bolts in and everything, just enough to hold it all together solid, you know. Stupid cork seal that's busted and broken, and I think we'll leave the seal out at the moment. Right, so these only go on one way. See, they're wider than those. So we want to get that roughly in the right place. Wide holes at the bottom. Put a couple of bolts in this because we've got to, when we get it in, just loosen it off, because you have that thrust mount bolts onto there with it. Yeah. And that stops the shunt of the engine backwards and forwards. That's what that one's for. The other one, I cleaned it this morning, the plate. We know it was devulcanised, you know, come apart because the rubber's still on the car. But they had put it back in with it broken anyway, which is not good. And you can see that that is off centre to the centre line of the gearbox, which the rubber mount is on the car, but whether it's right or not, because like, do you remember on that other video we did, and it was like 3/4 of an inch out on the rubber mount? But anyway, till we put it all back together.
I do pay attention.
Yeah. Board. All of this, when you put it together, you've obviously got your new seal in there, which is one of them, but they make them out of rubber now, which is a lot better. All of this is shim washers. Yeah. Little tiny thin paper washers. You should be able to put a bar in there about 6 inches out, you want 10 pound of weight, 10 to 30 pound of weight, and the torque ball will move.
Okay.
It doesn't move very much. Imagine the rear suspension going up and down at the back. By the time that has travelled along the torque tube, that's probably only moving 1/16 of an inch, something like that.
Yeah.
It doesn't move a lot, but you have to make sure it is shimmed up right, otherwise they just leak oil like mad. That's nipped up a bit, so let's loosen him off a bit so we've got movement. That's better. Right, so that's basically all we need to bolt that on. I'll do those up. Shut up, don't look at all the mess. Right, let's get her up in the air. Yeah, so now that's come out, you can see a reasonably equal gap either side of the prop shaft to the chassis now, the torque tube to the chassis, whereas that one was rammed up hard against it that way. So that sort of pinged itself back into place as such. Let's just push that axle back up at the back. So I took the check bar off. Just to make sure the axle is right, because this one, I took it off to check the length of these stabiliser links that are all bent, so we have to get new ones. Right, that's holding the axle in the right place now. So let's take that gearbox mount out. Yeah, on the earlier cars you have a plate on the floor here you can take out, so you can sort of see what's going on a bit better, but this hasn't got it for some reason.
It's amazing the things they changed as the years went on, isn't it?
Yeah, just little things, but yeah, see that? Doesn't look like it's the right mounting plate. Could be the wrong cross member, because this has been out. Because that doesn't really line up with anything properly there.
When you say it's been out, how do you know it's been out?
Oh, you can tell by the nuts and bolts have all got, you know, they're all different sizes and bodged up, different, they're just, it's definitely been out. Which isn't a problem, providing you know what's gone on, you know what I mean? I think we're probably going to have to take the cross member back out and re-drill it in places, I'm not sure. But until, like I say, until we get it in there. That's pulled up nice and tight. I would say, looking at about there, you can only go with looking roughly central, that's all you can do, you know?
Yeah.
You can, actually I can measure the flange edges. So now, we've got to try and jack that to get that axle up. That is miles out. So you've got nothing to stop the axle physically moving backwards as such. So whether the cross member is right, right, that's better for in the middle. So that is clearly in the wrong place.
What are you thinking?
But there's nothing to stop the rear axle going backwards and forwards.
Yep.
Because it's only hung on those two springs, yeah? Your tie bars here are actually on the torque tube. There's nothing to stop that whole thing doing that.
Yeah.
So it's clearly held on the engine mounts, on the gearbox mounts. So I've got to try, so that is clearly in the wrong place, that ain't going to work. because it needs to go over by a bloody mile. You've got to maintain that being central in the chassis. Look, if you look here, look. Right, see that gap there on your torque ball?
Yeah.
And that gap there?
Yeah.
It's miles out. And that's where they've re-drilled this cross member, because you're sitting in the centre of your rubber pad even though it is devulcanised. So we've got to take those bolts out and bring all of that over this way, because we're lined up fairly central on that chassis. I mean, that's near enough as damn it, so that, you know, you've got to get something in the middle. That looks better under there. We'll try the other mount and see if that lines up anywhere. So that is offset to that side, and I would say we want to be offset to the other side, but until I can get it bolted on, so let's clean the back of that off. Right, let's see what's going on with that. Right, so that's going to pull that further that way when I centralise that. So that mount is on the wrong way round, I think. Big puzzle, isn't it?
Appears to be.
Right, I'll just swap that round the other way. Everything's in the way.
Everything's in the way all the time.
All right, I'll tidy it up.
Get your lovely workshop.
I think it's quite good. Right, so that was that way up. Let's put him that way up, and that will change the offset angle. Let's have a look and see what that does. Right, that's the right way round now, so they will line up. That's got to go slightly that way, which is why you've got your slots. So let's get those pinched up. We're looking fairly central on that, so at the moment, when I jack the back axle, hopefully it'll all shunt forwards. Because unless you get this reasonably in the right place, you don't know your front and back for the front of the engine. And it did come out with a bit of a twang when it came out.
You did say when it came out, everything seemed to line back up again, all right?
Yeah, the axle did, yeah. So it was just that front mount, I think, this being back round the wrong way.
Yeah. So
it was offsetting the back the wrong way. And then that front mount, or lower mount, being completely in the wrong place. Just pissed everything out of line, you know. Sweet. That's sitting on there, so it's just got to come back now. So hopefully now, if I lower that and jack the back axle, it'll all roll forwards. Yeah, that's pulling it now, that's good. She's good. Right, that'll go nicely with those on the slots now it's pulled forwards. Right, so they're in line, those holes now. So that is just front to back. What I'll do then is wait until I get the new engine or gearbox mount. That's got to come down. I would say that's pretty good. That's pretty good. Sweet. Right. That's gone a lot easier than I thought it would actually. Okay, right, let's get that bell housing on. It all kind of looks roughly in the right place now.
That's good.
Compared to being the other side of the road. You know you're roughly in the middle of the torque tube. The torque tube's roughly in the middle of the chassis rails, yeah?
Yeah.
Unless the chassis is bent in half, which is highly unlikely. You've got a centre line there in the middle of that hole. So when you put your engine in, if the front's over here, then you know there's still something wrong at the back.
Yeah.
or if it's over there, but I think it's going to go in all right, because that all kind of makes sense how it's all slotted back together there. So basically what I've got to do now is get it down, measure front to back and see roughly where we're at. So that to the back edge of the plate is roughly 760 mil. 820. Shit. So those bolts are completely in the wrong place, okay. Yeah, we're going to run out of space here. See what we can do. I might have to weld a plate on the chassis to bring that forwards, but then you're getting into the issue of whether the radiator hits the fan or not and things like that. So you can't put those engine mounts in round that way, it won't work. It's impossible. It's the radiator that worries me. But won't know till I get the engine in. What a ball ache. Not even sure which way round this goes. Not sure. Heavy. One, two, three. So that goes that way, so that must go that way. Right, okay, so that's roughly in line where it goes. Well, that can't be far out if that hose fits straight on, can it?
What have you got in front of the engine and anything between there? Just the fan?
Nah, just the fan, that'll clear. That'll be fine. Sweet.
That's the result, isn't it?
Yeah. Okay.